Good afternoon, everyone, and I say good afternoon because we're now at 5:30 time instead of 6 o'clock, so it's nice that we're starting our council meetings a little bit earlier, half an hour earlier. So I will call the meeting number 18 for July 18, 2023 to order, and we recognize that we meet on the traditional territory of the LHTAKO DENE Nation. I will be now seeking a motion for approval of the agenda, but we do have 6 late items / changes to the agenda. Number one, the first one is item 1.2, June 22, Policy and Bylaw Committee Chair's summary report, and that is attached as a late item. We have accompanying admin report under K1, admin report 82/23. We have photos of the doc to accompany that particular agenda item. Under L1, Council Information Package, item number 2 is brought forward to discussion, and that is a letter from Northern Health Authority to Councillor Rudenberg regarding the meeting at the 2023 North Central Local Government Association Conference. And over the page, under committee reports, number 2, the Policy and Bylaw Committee Chair Summary. That is a late attachment. And also, oh yes, the Dragon Lake Boat Launch, the ratification of the e-vote. There are attachments, photographic attachments to that. And that is based, oh yes, and L1, as I said, is the late agenda item regarding the item number 2 brought forward under council information, which is a letter to Councillor Rudenberg from Northern Health. So given those changes, if we could get a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved Councillor Runge, seconded Councillor Vic. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Oh, and I'm sorry, I neglected to mention that Councillor Goulet sends his regrets. He's helping his dad with a medical situation, so we wish him all the best. Okay, so now that we've got the agenda out of the way, if we could get a motion to adopt the minutes of the last regular meeting held June 20. Councillor Elliott, Councillor McKelvey. Anyone opposed? All in favor? Carried. Okay, so at this time, we would like to welcome the 2023 Quesnel Ambassador Leadership Program, and we will be making plaque presentations to the outgoing royalty as well as welcoming the 2023 ambassadors. First of all, it's my pleasure to welcome the program coordinator, Rose Scott, the outgoing 2022 royalty, and the new 2023 royalty to tonight's City Council meeting. After I introduce each outgoing ambassador, please come up to the front to receive your plaque and your rose, and please remain up front until all presentations have been made so that we can make an entire group photograph. So what I'd like to do now is introduce and ask the 2022 royalty to come up one at a time. And first of all, and Councillor McKelvey is going to assist with the presentations. And Rhea, do I need to be up front, or can I do this all from here? Okay, that's good. I like that. So at this point, I'd like to call Nevaeh Kueber up to the front for your presentation. Is there a plaque to go with that?
I don't think
No plaque? Yeah.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's okay. Here's your plaque, Sarah.
And secondly, we'd like to call Jada Crossman to the front for your plaque and your rose. And now I would like to introduce the new 2023 Quesnel ambassadors. After I introduce each ambassador, please come to the front to receive your rose and a Quesnel, City of Quesnel jacket. Please remain up front until all presentations have been made so that we can take a group photo as well. So at this time, one at a time, if we could have Jamie-Lynn Fedoruk come up for your presentation. And finally, Avery Cassidy for your presentation, and I'll come up to the front to participate in the group photo.
Could you come forward, please?
Yes, please, Rose, you're being called to the front. In this little exercise, we have to be careful which roses we're talking about.
Thank you, Rose, for everything that you do for us.
Thank you, thank you. You're going to be part of the photograph, so stick around. So where's the camera? Where are we? Oh, there's one there. There's another one there.
Okay, I'm getting up. I don't
No, I want you in the picture.
You do?
Absolutely. Okay, we'll get closer. Just stand right in front of the table. There you go. Yeah. Do the Barkerville bump. Get cozy. Okay, before we go, I'm going to ask the outgoing royalty if you would just say a few words, please. The mic's ready.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jada Crossman, Quesnel Ambassador of 2022.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nevaeh, Quesnel Ambassador of 2022.
We are going to talk a little bit about what our experience has been like in the Quesnel Ambassador Leadership Program.
When we entered the program, we had no idea it would take us this far. We entered expecting a 6-month program where we would participate in workshops, as well as volunteer in the community and learn about public speaking.
Little did we know, 6 months would turn into 18 months, and we would be here today handing off our title.
The last 12 months were filled with lots of jokes, scream singing about corn, and getting lost in Penticton.
And overcoming fears that we never thought we could overcome.
As well as gaining more confidence.
Overall, this program has been a great experience, and I'm so happy for these two ambassadors to experience what we have.
We hope that the 2023 ambassadors enjoy the program just as much as we did.
One moment. You got to know which microphone to use here, so thank you. And do we have any words from the incoming royalty, or are we good?
I think one of them is ready.
Now's not a good time to be shy, so I am going to take the liberty of handing the mic over to our incoming royalty so that, okay, thank you, Lorianne.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie-Lynn Fedoruk, 2023 Quesnel Ambassador. I am excited to be here with everyone tonight. If Quebec candidacy was any indication of how fun this year is going to be, I am very excited to see how far it would take us.
Hi everyone, I'm Avery, Cassidy, 2023 Quesnel Ambassador, and I am extremely excited for my year. I'm so excited for everything that's going to happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And the incoming royalty is obviously going to have a very busy year, particularly with the 2024 LHTAKO Quesnel BC Winter Games coming up next February. And certainly this year's Billy Barker Days was a good practice run, sort of indoctrination right off the bat. I was at many Billy Barker Days events and saw you out there representing the Quesnel in true ambassador fashion. So thank you very much. And thank you, Rose. Okay, I guess we're ready to move along with the remainder of our meeting, and we do not have any delegations. We do not have any business arising from special closed meetings, no unfinished business, and moving to committee reports, item number 1, the June 28th, 2023 Financial Sustainability and Audit Committee Chair Summary. I'm going to go to Councillor Vic to report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was a very busy meeting. We tackled I don't know, felt like 25 items. But anyway, we did cover some really important topics, so it's going to take a few minutes to get through this, so bear with me. First up, we talked about our airport. Our airport runs at a deficit, and obviously taxpayers are funding that airport. And unfortunately, for next year, it's not going to get any better. Primarily because in this budget year, we used about $100,000 of our last of our COVID grant to offset some of the costs at the airport. So that's finished. That grant is depleted. So we have some challenges with the budget. So basically, the long and short of the reason why we're having a struggle is Central Mountain Air hasn't returned to their once prior robust schedule, which they had prior to COVID, and they are flying about 6 flights a week now from a high of 19, and that causes a significant budget shortfall. So what are we going to do about it? What are some of our strategies? Well, first of all, the Airport Advisory Committee, Mr. Mayor, which you sit on, will be bringing forward some strategic ideas for the airport to council to try and improve the situation, improve business. And one of the key plans is to develop property adjacent to the airport for lease and sale. And that requires improvements to the access to the road, and then it would require subdivision of those properties. That could make a big difference in our fortunes with the airport. Secondly, cost-reducing measures have already been investigated and implemented at the airport, and we will continue to research additional measures. For example, in-house janitorial services were chosen instead of going with contract, and also we discontinued security patrols at the airport. So with actions like those, we hope to save some money. And then obviously, we're going to continue to outreach to Central Mountain Air and other potential business partners in the hopes to expand opportunities at the airport for those businesses. And last but not least, the renewal of the MOU with the Kueber Regional District will come to pass in 2024. And we hope to encourage our partners to come to the table with a larger contribution. So those are some things we're implementing or some of our planning to assist the airport. Despite the financial challenges, the airport remains a critical component in our local economy, notwithstanding its role with healthcare, for example, medevac flights and wildfire operations. And once again, we find ourselves in a critical year with wildfire, so our airport plays a key role. Closing or downgrading our airport is not recommended. Next, we moved on to a food hub update by Manager Reid. FSAC received an update onto the status of the food hub, and just to bring council back up to speed, the city has received $1.25 million in grant funding for the food hub, with the net contribution from the city of Quesnel being about $24,000. So we've leveraged quite little money from the city to create the food hub. Grant funding has covered staffing, equipment for Sprout Kitchen for the startup and beyond. As Sprout Kitchen has grown, however, it now faces some challenges. Space limitations are affecting the availability of extra dry storage as well as space for new equipment. Additionally, hazard analysis critical control point certified product, that's a mouthful, HACCP, requires year-round temperature control on the premise, among other things. Specifically, air-conditioned space during summer and heat waves is part of that requirement for HACCP certified product. Some of the tenants that are currently using our food hub are pursuing this type of product, so addressing the air conditioning issue is essential for us. The good news is grant funding exists to cover the installation of the air conditioning, but not operational expenses to fund ongoing maintenance of that air conditioner and things like hydro. Considering the requirement for additional space and the desire to make significant improvements to Sprout Kitchen, the city may choose to exercise an option in the lease to outright purchase the property, and that option in the lease is at $369,000, which is actually less than assessed value currently. It should also be noted that CMHA is now operating a new food bank and leasing space at that building, 101 Marsh Drive. So FSAC has a recommendation on this, and that will come at the end of the report. We moved on to a strategic budget review session. Staff reviewed with the committee major issues facing the city in budget 2024 and discussed options for a detailed review of that budget. The process will continue in September, and council is encouraged to provide input on any areas they would like a more detailed review in. A quick summary of some of our pressures are, obviously inflation continues to be a pressure. We also have an expiring QP collective agreement coming next year. Reserve funding deficits exist, specifically in capital reinvestment, landfill closure, and capital, tax and community stabilization, and the fleet replacement and water capital. The RCMP building renovation is a project we have our eye on, as well as water treatment. Airport funding and other operational funding shortfalls as a result of the depletion of the COVID grant will also add pressure to our budget. Spending issues. We reviewed a couple of spending issues. We have a sewer repair project on Vaughan Street. Due to the unknowns of this project, there is a potential for it to go over budget. Additionally, the engine needs to be replaced on the landfill compactor. The good news is it's under warranty. The bad news is we're renting a replacement motor currently, which is costing us every week that we have it. We moved into Indigenous crosswalks, and Lindsay, my co-here, is going to be going over a report on this. So we do have a recommendation, but we're going to leave that until Lindsay's finished. We then talked about the Caribou Ski Touring Club. Council may recall that they approached us for some support about a month ago. The club has updated their request for funding from the city for the biathlon range. At this point, the club requires $21,309 for the project, which is considerably lower than the ask about a month ago. And they've researched other grants, which is why this amount has lowered. The LHTAKO Quesnel Games will be a significant event for the city and the area, and the LHTAKO DENE and surrounding communities. The biathlon range upgrade will be an important component of these games, and we have a recommendation on that request. So I'll go through the recommendations, Mr. Mayor, if you're okay with that. The first is we moved that the Financial Sustainability and Audit Committee recommends to Council to direct staff to do a business analysis regarding the purchase of 101 Marsh Drive prior to the expiration of the lease. I would move that recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Vic, for moving, and Councillor Elliott is seconding. Any discussion? Councillor Runge.
Thank you. I think it's a great idea. Are we planning to have this business analysis done in-house, or are we contracting out the work? And if so, what kind of costs are we looking at?
It's in-house as far as I recall. City manager, is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, I believe we'll be taking that first crack at it in-house. If there's still questions, we need answered, we could go outside, but I think in-house is appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that has a question or a comment before I call the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, Councillor Vic, the next one.
Continuing. Regarding the Caribou Ski Touring Club request for financial assistance, I'll move that FSAC and Audit Committee recommend to Council that up to $21,309, which is dependent on whether the club is successful with other grants, which could happen, so it's an up to, be contributed to the Caribou Ski Touring Club for the biathlon range with funding coming from Council initiatives. I'll move that.
Before we proceed with that, I noticed that we've missed one resolution. Is that what you're trying to get my attention on, Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, actually, I was trying to, there's a late-breaking change as of July 11th. We did receive a notice from Tanya Black, who's actually present, that they have received confirmation they're receiving $5,000 more from another BC Games fund. So they're amending the request from the city down by that amount, so down from $21,000 to $16,309. And Councillor Vic, I see your name isn't on that, and for that, I apologize. I should have sent that to you earlier.
Well, since we're in the middle of the motion, are you okay with amending the motion accordingly down to 16 and change?
It didn't get seconded, so.
I know it didn't get seconded, so.
I'll rephrase. How's that?
Yeah.
What was that number again, Mr. City Manager?
16309.
16309. Yep. So FSAC and Audit Committee recommends to Council that up to $16,309, depending on perhaps other grants, be contributed to the Caribou Ski Touring Club for the range with funding coming from Council initiatives.
It's seconded by Councillor Runge. He got there first. Okay, is there any discussion on that? Okay, question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Before we move on, just going back to the food hub, there was two resolutions.
Yeah, I realize that, Mr. Mayor. I moved too quickly there. So I guess I could make a second resolution, and we'll jump back to the food hub, that FSAC, and I'll move this motion, that FSAC and Audit Committee recommend to Council that staff proceed with the installation of air conditioning at the food hub with capital costs being covered by a grant. Any increased operating costs due to air conditioning would be responsibility of the food hub/city. I'll move that.
Okay, moved by Councillor Vic, seconded by Councillor Rudenberg. Any discussion? Oh, Councillor Runge.
Always questions. So have we had any discussions with the food hub with regards to percentage allocations on that food hub city, or is it just going forward, we'll look at it?
So the capital cost of the air conditioning is completely covered. So regarding increased operational costs of the HVAC, which is primarily going to be hydro, that becomes a rent expense, which invariably becomes a contribution from the city.
Thank you. And if I may add, may become a contribution from the city if, depending on if there's an overage or a deficit at the end of the year.
Okay, it seems like we're ready to call the question. No more questions or discussion. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, now we're going to skip over. We already did the Caribou Ski Touring Club, so we're going to move down to Indigenous crosswalks. Councillor Vic.
So I'd like to just hang on that motion, Mr. Mayor, until Lindsay delivers her report.
Okie dokie, fine. So we don't have anything more then from FSAC, and so therefore we can move on to item number 2 under committee reports, which is the June 22 Policy and Bylaw Committee Chair Summary. Councillor Runge to report, and note that this is a late attachment to your agenda package.
Thank you very much. My apologies once again for making it late. Billy Barker Days came in the way, and kudos to all the guys that organized Billy Barker Days. It was great this year. Anyway, this report is for the Policy and Bylaw Committee meeting at June 22nd, and we covered a few points here. So the first one, we continued looking at the smoking regulation bylaw 1767 of 2015, and we looked at the merits of adding a policy to restrict all smoking in commercial spaces. Recommendation will follow sometime in the future. The second one was a tree bylaw update. I'll learn how to speak again. Staff updated the Policy and Bylaw Committee regarding the status of the tree bylaw, and it's currently being drafted. Staff is reviewing how the bylaw will work with permitting and currently reviewing the process with the legal department. Another topic that we covered was the Housing Accelerator Fund. There was a whack of money for a lot of the communities, but what came up, of course, was that there were some serious obstacles, which would include oversubscription by the program by other communities and a community growth rate requirement, which makes funding for possibilities under this program very unlikely for Quesnel. Just because our growth rates aren't quite as high as some of the other small communities to the south. Policy Bylaw agreed that city staff should enter into conversations, and I'm not sure what the updates were, because on June 22nd, there were some visiting Union of BC Municipalities staff coming through to obtain guidance, direction, and possibilities for program flexibility for smaller communities like Quesnel that don't meet the guidelines, but really would love to get some of that Housing Accelerator Fund. We also had some roundtable discussions. We put them on here just so you'd hear about them, but they were, we had discussions with regards to current developments in Quesnel and the turnaround timelines due to current policies and practices. And we agreed that although sometimes quicker turnaround on projects is preferred by contractors and other people, the city's processes and policies are quite fast, and that the processes followed encourage a high standard and a high quality of work that is expected. We also discussed the state of drug usage in the downtown area, and we noted that although there was an improvement relative to the first half of last year, more conversations need to be had with public health and the Union of BC Municipalities Convention in the fall 2023 to continue discussing mitigation efforts. So we will continue to review the possibility of a province-wide approach to open drug use to ensure the city is current and up-to-date on its bylaws and policies. Then we also had some correspondence from the SPCA on animal welfare. We reviewed the documents of the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, and many of the suggestions that were asked for are already within the documentation, and they're covered by City of Quesnel bylaws. So we agreed that staff will continue to review provincial legislation regarding the topics and see if we need to make any changes. The topic of feeding of wildlife is one that the Policy and Bylaw Committee agreed could have more focus on. As a northern community that is close to nature, the committee felt that it was important to remind residents about the circumstances of feeding some wildlife. Staff will work to include some feeding of wildlife material in an upcoming city mailer. And the recommendations is that the Policy and Bylaw Committee directs staff to bring the City of Quesnel Smoking Regulation Amendment Bylaw 1974-2023 to Council for first reading. And that is it.
Thank you, Councillor Runge. You're moving it, and Councillor Rudenberg is seconding it. Any discussion? Councillor Rudenberg.
Thank you. So I know that UBCM staff was here. Was there anything of interest in the discussion around the Housing Accelerator program? Yes, no? Nothing that we didn't already know?
Can you hear me? Oh, there we are. Thank you, Councillor. I think that's an adequate description, not really anything we didn't know or suspect. I think they were pretty much in concurrence with what we were thinking on the grant requirements. Just so you know, we are still looking at it just to see if there's anything we can squeeze out of it.
So just to follow up with that, I had a board meeting last week, and the general conversation around that was the same amongst the representatives that were sitting around the board table, is that it's definitely not made for smaller communities that aren't moving and shaking like a Vancouver or whatever. So it's great that they've got, billions of dollars in it, but it's not really going to help a lot of communities. And just the other piece is you'll find that the open drug usage discussion will be coming up at UBCM. There are several resolutions that have been brought forward in regards to that. We also had a presentation that I'm not at liberty to talk about, and we know that the Premier is also looking at some of the consequences of that policy. So it will be an interesting topic come September.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rudenberg. So we have a mover and a seconder. Are we having any more discussion, or can I call the question? I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is a report from myself, and this is regarding the Airport Advisory Committee. And I'm actually reporting on two meetings in one, really, because we had meetings on both May 25 and June the 20th, and at both of those meetings we were discussing strategic initiatives for the airport. And basically what it all rendered down to, and there was a motion by consensus that the Airport Advisory Committee recommend to Quesnel City Council that the city focus on 4 key long-term strategic goals for the Quesnel Regional Airport. And these are, I don't believe that they're in any order of priority. They're all important. Number 1, develop opportunities for the lease or sale of legal lots on airport property by providing public road access and proceeding with a subdivision. And just for the public's information, what's necessary here is that the airport road is not a public road, and so therefore none of the potential lots at the airport would have public road access as is required in order for them to become eligible to be a freehold subdivided lot. So that is number 1, to get that road legalized. Number 2 is to seek funding and consider phasing opportunities to establish a parallel taxiway at the airport. And that would basically better serve the initial attack center at the airport, and it would also provide secondary airside access for any of the potential lots that would be created, hopefully as a result of privatizing that road, or how would I put this? Making that road legal. Number 3, seek funding and consider phasing options for the construction of a new operations building and multi-purpose hangar at the airport. And number 4, engage more actively with Central Mountain Air, including at a political level, to encourage that air carrier to increase their operations and services in Quesnel. So How does that work, staff? I can't make that a motion. Can I call on someone to make that motion and we can get that on the books? Go ahead, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So these recommendations are actually quite a wide variety. Of this, we have 2 large capital requests. One of the number 1 is kind of a operational / capital request. Number 4 is strictly an operational request. So those ones are quite doable now. The numbers 2 and 3 are both capital items of a large nature. So I think number 2 and 3 should be referred to future capital planning sessions, so that they could be considered in conjunction with other capital needs of the city, and think about where the funding would come from those 2 items. But as far as number 1 and number 4, I think staff can start working on those. Number 1, we'll take some funding, so we will have to suss out whether that can be done within our current funding envelope. Number 4 currently is very doable. We can engage in that this year, and it's something needs to be done, right? So I think it's not really of a piece that we can just make one reference to it. What our preference would be to leave this with staff for inclusion into the various plans as necessary. It won't be forgotten. It'll come forward as we work through our next operating budgets and through our operating process for the rest of this year as well.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, and I agree. I mean, our 2023 budget is already set, and so do we need a motion to refer that to staff? Would that help for staff to move forward on those 4 items?
That's at the will of council. If council wants to refer to staff, that's great. Other than that, we'll take this as a referral from the airport committee. So it's not the same, maybe not quite as much clout as the council referral, but either is fine. They won't be forgotten. They will be brought forward at the appropriate time for consideration.
Okay, so go ahead, Councillor Vic.
Sorry to be contrarian here. Considering our budget with that airport, I'd like to, with council's consideration, I'd like to hive off number 1 to try and get some more immediacy to it and add a little bit of horsepower to that, because I think number 4, I agree, is straightforward and very doable. Number 2 and 3 are major capital expansions to our budget. But number 1 is somewhere in the middle. And I'd like to see some horsepower go towards that, if at all possible. And I would, with council's consideration, I'd like to advance that quicker.
So would you agree then your motion could be to refer number 1 and 4 to staff and the mayor, I mean, for the political engagement with Central Mountain Air?
Yeah, so I guess I'd make a motion that as a result of the airport committee, advisory committee strategic goals, number 1 be advanced, expedited at the earliest opportunity, as well as idea number 4.
Okay, so we've got to go ahead, City Manager.
Thank you. And if I could modify the number 1 just a bit and be so bold as to suggest that we bring back a report, because by the time you start doing the surveying and the other legal work, there are expenses related to that, right? So perhaps for number 1, staff could bring back a more detailed report to this council to say, here's what the project would look like, here's where the costs are on this, and do that in the short term, right? I'm not talking about waiting till the fall. Let's bring it back and do some work on it. So potentially for implementation or the start of implementation this year.
Mr. City Manager, that's perfect. Thank you.
That was the intent that I was driving at, not to simply approve it, but to refer it to staff, and staff could come back with some information about cost and so on, because it may affect our budget. Anything more? Yes, Councillor Rudenberg.
I would change that may to it would affect our budget. But and I agree with this approach because by us passing a motion, it's like we agree with this, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with it if it's something that's way outside of what we can afford right now. So it's good to see that we'll have that conversation in the form of a report from staff. And I'd like to gently suggest that we encourage our CRD colleagues to also be part of that political piece around talking with Central Mountain Air, because a majority of us, not majority, but there are quite a few of us who live in the regional district would like to see more flights out of Quesnel. So I'd just like to gently remind us that we should encourage our CRD colleagues to help us.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rudenberg. Now I have a mover and a seconder, don't I? Then I will call the question on that. All in favor? I do not have a seconder. Okay, I'm looking for it. Thank you, Councillor Runge. Okay, now we will call the question if there's no further comment or discussion or question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, the next one is another report from myself, and this is Board on the Road highlights for the Caribou Regional District, June 22 and 23. And Board on the Road this year was held at McLeese Lake. And I'll say right at the outset that judging by the very poor attendance at both the board committee of the whole meeting, the board regular meeting, and the barbecue, I would say that I would think that the Caribou Regional Board is going to be looking strongly at whether they would continue with Board on the Road, because through the whole meeting, I remember only seeing one person in the audience, and that person didn't stick around for too long. Maybe they were bored on the road. I don't know. But so we'll see what happens with that. With regard to water and sewer capital projects, an update was provided on the future infrastructure funding needs for the CRD's 16 water and sewer systems that will require an estimated almost $10 million over the next 10 years. And this is all brought about by aging infrastructure, compounding the issues to be faced in the future. This was an interesting presentation from the Chief Building Inspector, and it was all about the incorporation of the Energy Step Code into the BC Building Code. And obviously that is going to affect here at the City of Quesnel, and there's a need for continued support and education of builders to achieve compliance, particularly as the province continues to codify and require buildings to be net zero ready by 2020 or 2032. And this is a subject here, engagement strategy, and this is something that obviously the city struggles with, and that is it seems like the more technology and the more platforms that we have, the more difficult it is to get the public to engage and participate. And so the regional district will continue exploring ways in which it can increase awareness of its initiatives, decisions, and priorities, while also exploring avenues to continue improving its engagement efforts. So we at the City of Quesnel are not the only ones struggling with that. In fact, I think it's a phenomenon all over the place. We went into, we had a meeting of the Caribou-Chilcotin Regional Hospital District, and they voted, the hospital district voted to commit funding to G.R. Baker Memorial Hospital phone system replacement and upgrade, and that was to the tune of $262,500. And since this list of highlights came out, I was at the Regional District Committee of the Whole meeting on Thursday, and also down to the Caribou-Chilcotin Regional Hospital District and the board meeting on Friday. And I did make the comment that I thank them for having their meetings right on top of Billy Barker days, but we made it happen. So I don't require any resolutions out of that. So now we're going to go to the next report, which is from the city manager regarding regarding the e-vote ratification of the Dragon Lake Boat Launch License of Occupation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is actually quite a good news story that is a result of a lot of work what's being done on this file, mostly by Lindsay, our senior community development coordinator. So this essentially, I'm just asking council for ratification of the vote, the informal vote we did electronically. But before we go there, I've actually asked Lindsay if she could just share a bit of information around what our immediate short-term plans are and then what our longer-term plans are for this boat launch. I don't think it's hit the public that much just because we've been going through this very long and tedious process of getting tenure on this property, which I'm happy to say we do have tenure now on the boat launch, which is fabulous. So with council's indulgence, I would like to hand it over to Lindsay for a discussion. And there were some pictures put into the additional pictures in the agenda would help to describe what's going to go on. Thank you.
Okay, Lindsay, I'll turn it over to you, and I see that we have pictures up on the screen there. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I just have a few notes on this. So in early 2022, as you guys know, we submitted that 10-year application. It took a very, very long time. Just last week or the week before, we got the license of occupation document signed for the boat launch. We also have the Section 11 Water Sustainability Act approvals for the repairs only. It's a different application process for repairs rather than construction. So when it is time to redo that whole boat launch, that'll be a different application as well. So repairs are going to take place this weekend. MCON and Fresno have very generously donated all time, materials, and equipment to get the boat launch repaired, so it's going to be no cost to the city at all. Those will take place on Saturday. We have a news release ready to go out tomorrow just to let public know that the boat launch will be closed for Saturday and maybe Sunday if the repairs take a little bit longer. There will be a public dock being installed sometime this year. There's no timeline for that yet. We're waiting for a different Section 11 approval for that dock installation, and that dock will be funded and installed by Freshwater Fisheries Society of BC, which are called Go Fish BC. And that dock, I have some specs for the dock, and I thought I included a picture, but I must not have. The dock will have a 20-foot long ramp, which will be 6 feet wide, and a 30-foot long walkway, which will also be 6 feet wide, with a 40-foot long T section that will be two 8-foot wide, 20-foot long sections for the dock. So it will be fully wheelchair accessible. The ramp will be pinned to the shore using a 5-meter pin, and the dock will be anchored using chains and concrete blocks. There is the potential, if winds in the wintertime, if they can disrupt the dock. So my contact at Go Fish BC, he was saying that the dock may need, the T section of the dock may need to be removed each autumn and then reinstalled in spring. He said it's a very easy process that takes maybe an hour. Other than that, so almost right away, we're going to start, I'm going to work with Tian and do a public consultation. So I think we'll most likely start on Let's Connect and see how that engagement goes. And then next steps after that will be confirming funding for the next stage of the boat launch, so the double-wide boat launch, line painting for the parking lot, and a new outhouse. An aquatic engineer will need to design the launch, which can be kind of a costly process. More Section 11 approvals will need to happen, and that can take about 6 to 8 months for approval. So if we're looking at next year for a boat launch, or a new boat launch, we kind of need to get moving on this as soon as possible, which is great now because we do have 10 years, so we can move forward. So, yep.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to read the recommendation into the record, and then I'll be looking for a mover and a seconder. The recommendation is that council ratifies the electronic vote held July 6, 2023, that directed staff to enter into a license of occupation with the province of British Columbia on behalf of the city of Quesnel, that council directs staff to enter into a license of is this a repeat? License of occupation with the province of British Columbia, provincial file number 5408073, provincial disposition number 944261, for the Dragon Lake boat launch situate on Quesnel Hydraulic Road, and that council authorizes the mayor and city manager to sign the required documentation. Could I have a mover by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor McKelvey? Any discussion? Yes, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And not so much discussion, just kudos, Lindsay, that you've done a fantastic job. There's been so much work put into this, and it's really appreciated to the many, many people that use Dragon Lake. All those public accesses have been extremely busy because a lot of people just can't get on the main boat launch. So I'm getting complaints from some of the homeowners, around the other spots. So it's really going to ease the tensions. It's going to be fantastic for some of the bigger boats, and a dream come true with the dock getting moved forward too. But if you wouldn't mind, I'm sorry, just a little slower on the length. We've got a 20-foot long ramp, then a 40-foot dock, and then a 40-foot T at the end.
So the picture would have clarified a little bit more, but my apologies, I forgot to attach that to my email to Rhea. So it's a 20-foot ramp with the 30-foot straight section after that. So it'll be about 50 feet in total straight, and then a 40-foot T.
And the width?
6 feet for the straight section, and then the T is 8 feet wide.
Awesome. Thank you very much again. Oh, and to Manager Johnson, it hasn't slipped off the radar. There are many, many people looking forward to this, and it's going to be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, indeed, this is good news. So I have a mover and a seconder. Any discussion? All in favor? I can't see anybody. Go ahead, City Manager.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify one point while it's still open, discussion is still open on this item, is that as Lindsay said, on this weekend, we will be doing the fix-up on the existing boat ramp. So hopefully the media gets the word out there that if you need to launch your boat, get it in the water before the weekend, because it'll be closed. And it'll be closed Saturday, potentially closed Sunday. Huge shout out goes out to MCON. Huge shout out goes out to Fresno Construction. Both of those doing work that, is well behind the time, because if you saw the pictures, how decrepit it looks. So they're bringing it up to standard, so at least we can use it before we get our brand spanking new one built in a couple of years. Thank you.
Good show. So can I now call the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Well done. Okay, the next item is item number 2 under city staff reports, admin report 78/23, community forest update. And I'm going to go now to Manager Aaron Robinson to report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this report is to update Council on the Three Rivers Community Forest. The Three Rivers Community Forest Limited Partnership and the General Partner Corporation are on the verge of being legally created. To date, a document called the Participation Agreement has guided and governed this process. Now we need to look at making sure everything happening under that participation agreement is properly transitioned to the partnership, so that we really get ready for standing on our own 2 feet to pursue the community forest agreement through the application process. So as Council will remember, and we were taught this a couple times by presentations from legal counsel, a limited partnership is made up of limited partners and a general partner, each with distinct and important roles. For the partnership, each LHTAKO, ESDLA, the city, and NASCO are limited partners, essentially the owners, with the COM4 GP the general partner, responsible for managing the day-to-day business. And you'll see this bolded in your agenda package. The limited partners have limited liability so long as they stay out of the management of the business of the partnership and let the general partner do the job of managing the business. This is important to keep in mind as we move into the partnership operating as a business. In our case, the Community Forest GP has a board of directors. So each LHTAKO, ESDLA, the City of Quesnel, and NASCO are able to appoint one individual to that board. These will be the individuals responsible for steering the business of the partnership. The board of directors of the general, the GP, COM4 GP, is at the core of how the partnership will operate once formed, meaning the board is at the core of how the CFA will now be pursued, as well as all its transition work. And the transition work right now, you'll see on the second page, includes things like setting up the bank account, transitioning money over into that bank account, engaging service providers, finding a general manager, insurance, and all of the administration tasks that will be involved, as well as submitting the application. So I'm going to stop there before I move on to the recommendation and just make sure there's no questions.
Thank you, Aaron. So are there any questions before we go to the recommendation, which is to appoint Forestry Initiatives Manager Aaron Robinson as the first board member of the General Partner Board of Directors? So is there any questions? Go ahead, Councillor, or are you moving? Thank you. Councillor Elliott is moving. Councillor Rudenberg is seconding. Is there any discussion? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Is there anything more on that report, or are we good to go now? Thank you, Aaron. But now I'm going to go to report number 8423, Interconnector Next Steps. City Manager Johnston to report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report's actually kind of a long report. I'm not going to go through the whole thing in detail. This is old hat for council. You've seen every single bit of it. What we're trying to get to is what is our next steps with the interconnector project. And really what triggered this is there were some provincial budget meetings which were held, and the Chamber of Commerce did a presentation there about the interconnector project, feeling how important it was. And as well, the city is about to send its usual delegation down to UBCM, and at that point in time, that is typically our best, or one of our best opportunities to lobby the government to keep proceeding with this very important project to the city. So I put together just a bit of a summary what talks about kind of where we're at with the project, but then really the goal of this is to get input from council about where do we go next. So the purpose of this report is just to provide council a status update. This project has been put on hold by the province, and that's due to other local and provincial road priorities which took precedence over the interconnector. And they made no bones about saying that. Modi said there's so many priorities in the Quesnel area. If you look out in almost any direction, there's land movement, and there's roads washed out, and all kinds of issues with the road network. So they fixed a lot of those up, and I'm working on a lot of those now. So it really brings us, hopefully for us, it brings this back into focus for the province. So the goal of council is to try to get this very important project back into the provincial capital queue. This report talks about the regional and provincial benefits. And that's the one thing I would say on this project where we haven't sold as much to the provinces. What are the provincial benefits? We know we need it from the city side. It's very clear all of our needs around community safety and community development and all of those things. It's very important. And also the fact that we've got some really old infrastructure there that is ministry infrastructure that needs replacing. But really, what are the provincial benefits to it? So we can hopefully get other partners in the province interested in this project. And I think the number one thing is improved uptime. We've all seen what happens when we get even short periods of downtime on the rail overhead or the Quesnel River Bridge. It can turn into long traffic lines in a big hurry, depending on the time of day. And there's no traffic detours for large trucks around those bridges. There are none in this community. The closest detour that I know would be going back out to and hitting Highway 5 and driving around it. There is just no good way around it. So that's not true for light truck traffic where the Johnson Bridge is available, but as you know, the Johnson Bridge is load limited to 10,000 kilograms. So the lack of alternative routes combined with the age and deterioration of the infrastructure makes that a very high-risk section of Highway 97. And again, that's not high risk just to this community. It's high risk to the whole North Country, which relies on that, any traffic over that going up north or coming south. Both of those pieces of infrastructure, the Quesnel River Bridge and the rail overhead, are very old and close to the end of their life cycles. The current plan by Modi is to rehabilitate those structures to extend their life. The stated extension that I've seen is if they do it, it could maybe give them 25 more years out of those structures. One of the city's concerns is related to the downtime of those rebuilds. As you know, with no good route past it, any downtime can be very significant to the community and really almost put the community in a real chokehold where traffic all comes to a stop. If there's two large pieces of infrastructure getting rebuilt, not at the same time, but one subsequent to the other, that will take, according to their own estimates, at least 2 years to complete, with single lane alternating traffic required for an estimated 10 months of that time. And they don't make an estimate about how much time traffic would not be able to cross. What they've said publicly is that they could always keep one lane open. I suspect that will be a challenge for them. The alternate to that is the interconnector, of course. So the plans for the interconnector completely rethink the traffic flows in downtown Quesnel. The Quesnel River crossing and rail overpass would be realigned. So there would be new structures built, which would mean that the old structures can be left in place until the new ones are ready for traffic. So you eliminate that high level of downtime and that high level of single lane alternating traffic. This project, of course, reduces the average time it takes to travel through the town, and very importantly, removes heavy truck traffic from the downtown Quesnel, reducing traffic congestions, improving safety outcomes, and in particular, pedestrian vehicular interactions would certainly be way less than they are now. Due to the elimination of stoplights, many of those on a grade, the air quality in the downtown should improve dramatically due to the interconnector. And finally, the City of Quesnel, and this is more of an internal benefit, would have Carson Avenue and Front Street, and the mayor mentioned to me today, Legion Avenue back as municipal roads, allowing revitalization of those streets. That's very important for us, maybe not as important for other communities further north or south, but very important for the City of Quesnel. So the next step on this project and where it stalled out at was that we've gone through feasibility and the business case analysis. The next phase is functional design. The estimated cost on that, and it's a little bit dated, this estimated cost was $1.5 to $2 million. And that would really be the next step in if we can keep pushing the design on this. As council will recall, this is a highly capital-intensive project. The last number that I saw on this project, and it was a number that came to us in 2020, was $320 million. So this is high requirement for capital. So options on this, I'm not going to go through the background details. It describes more the project more. I'm happy to talk if any council has any questions on this. But I think the options in front of council right at this point in time are we can continue our lobbying campaign to encourage the province to move this project forward. We had talked earlier, and I think it was in a strategic planning session perhaps, about maybe a letter being sent from the office of the mayor to the various local governments situated in the vicinity of Quesnel and up north, and to any other key stakeholders in transportation, asking for their support on this issue, so that when we do visit the minister, we have more letters of support that are fresher. Council could also meet with province to determine their priorities, like meet first with the province, possibly at UBCM, and see where they want to go with it, or arrange a meeting with Modi, including the minister, outside of the UBCM window altogether. As you know, UBCM gets very, very busy. So we're completely open from a staff perspective to what these various options are. I will just state that the mayor and myself are meeting with a senior Modi person who's still responsible for this file to really get an understanding of exactly where we're at on this file and where they feel that their next step would be to see this moving forward. We're actually, unfortunately, couldn't meet before tonight, but we're meeting shortly with that person. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Manager. We do have three options on the table. I think that all three options are in play. And I don't know if we need a resolution to sort of, I guess, get those options onto the record. What is your recommendation, Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess to me the options boil down in kind of one or two directions. A, do we send out letters to all of the communities up north and do the full court press, so to speak, on trying to get support for this project? Do we do that first and try to accumulate a pile of those and bring them down to UBCM? Or do we go down to UBCM and be, active listening of when they want to support this project and how that's going to work? Or bypass the UBCM process on this and make a special trip down there just to see the minister and talk to the senior Modi folks. So they're all slightly different options, but they all boil down to how do we talk to the province on this issue.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Rudenberg and then Councillor Runge.
So I see where the mayor is going with this. I think that all three options have a role in us moving forward. Councillor Sheila Bohm, who's the NCLGA president this year, actually approached me and asked if we needed a letter from NCLGA. So it's already out there, some of the discussion. And I think that, when we talk about the North, I think we include all of NCLGA. If we're going to send letters out to local governments, make it the entire NCLGA area. I mean, we do represent 60% plus of the province. I think that we do need to set up to start that conversation at UBCM with the caveat, as we're about to head out the door, is that we're going to be setting a meeting afterwards to further discuss what this looks like. Because those 15-minute meetings, we know there's never going to be any kind of solid give to us as a community. But I think we set it up for the next meeting. So I think, like I said, I think all three of these are probably very relevant.
Thank you. I agree that, yes, we should touch on it at our speed dating session at the UBCM, but also it's so critical that it warrants a special trip to Victoria to basically present our case. I don't think there's any harm in putting those letters out to NCLGA membership, also to all of the stakeholders that use Highway 97 through Quesnel, and I'm thinking of trucking companies, charter companies, and even Northern Health, and I'm going to reach out to even the Prince Rupert Port Authority because of container shipping and so on and so forth. So the list goes on, and I think that it wouldn't hurt for some of those letters to come in before, during, and after UBCM. Before I go any further, I just want to say that our MLA Corley Oakes has really jumped in wholeheartedly in support of the interconnector project. And just to put everything into perspective, and I know that I've said this to council before, but for the public's information, I'm going to do a little bit of history here, and that is that back in the mid-70s, I think it was about 1975, the then mayor, Seal Tingley and the then Minister of Highways, Alec Fraser, were cutting the ribbon on the North Star interchange. And I was, I think, assistant town clerk at that time, and I was there, and because I'd set the event up, and as they cut the ribbon, I distinctly remember Alec Fraser handing the scissors back to Seal Tingley because they were my scissors and I didn't want to lose track of them. And Alec pointed down the road to, down North Star Road, like north, to where the pulp mill is. And he said, "There you go, Mr. Mayor. There's your bypass. Go get it." And that was 45 years ago, and we're still talking about it. So, and we've got to go back and remember the overwhelming public support for the bypass/interconnector. Back in the day, it wasn't called the interconnector, but there was a session, or maybe even 2 sessions at the senior center that were absolutely jam-packed, standing room only. And I do remember when Kevin Falcon was the Minister of Highways, and he came up to make a little speech as they were doing a major repave project on Highway 26 going out to Barkerville, and he did make the comment that and this is his words, that Quesnel is the worst choke point on Highway 97 between Prince George and Cache Creek. And also, you know, we really need to emphasize with the government air quality. And at the last meeting, just last week, the air quality roundtable was very strongly in favor, came out very strongly in favor of the interconnector project from an air quality point of view. And it's not only, you know, for downtown air quality and for community air quality, but when we think about the poor air quality that is generated by all of that traffic coming down and up and down Front Street, and that's Fraser Village, the hospital, the medical clinics, the growing number of housing projects up and down Front Street, and they are primarily Indigenous, and it gives us a much-needed opportunity to reclaim Front Street, Carson Avenue, and Legion Drive. In fact, if we can succeed in getting the bypass or the interconnector completed, it will eliminate stopping and going at 7 lights for through traffic. And also, I think that there's increasing need to get the highway away from the Moffat Bridge Loop and basically the new LHTAKO DENE Park, because that would be certainly an advantage to keep that traffic out of there. So all of the options are on the table, and I look forward to meeting with, and along with my council colleagues, meeting with the minister at UBCM, and we're going to have a meeting with top officials here very shortly, because it is a very important file. So I don't believe that we need, go ahead, Councillor Runge, and then Councillor Vic.
Thank you. Yes, so I was just going to add a little bit prior to that. I would love if we would have the ability at UBCM to either meet in Victoria, or for me, a better case is actually to get the minister up here to look at the bridge themselves, because they would then see the condition that the bridge is in, and actually it would add a little bit of credence to what the issue is.
I couldn't agree with you more, that a picture with having the minister standing right there looking at the situation is worth more than us going to Victoria. Councillor Vic.
I agree with everything said, Mr. Mayor. However, the province has sort of let their hand show that they're favoring perhaps a rehab of those 2 bridges, which we don't agree with. And so I really believe we need to focus some of our efforts on our northern colleagues, understanding that if we change and reroute things, then it's to their benefit as well, notwithstanding everything else we've just talked about in the last 20 minutes. So I guess my question would be to the city manager, would there be value value in preparing for NCLGA, as well as northern cities and communities, a stock letter which they could craft to their own letter easily, quickly, to help us build an inventory of support from these communities and cities.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor, that actually is our intent. What we will do is, and I would like to do it this week before Laura goes on vacation, because she's going to do the work, but to send out a letter to the NCLGA on the mayor's letterhead, which describes the situation, describes what the benefits are. So the benefits, the region or the provincial and regional benefits included in this report, bullet form. Quick and concise, what are the benefits for them to sign on, and then a suggested resolution that they could attach to a letter of support, so that they would be supporting the right thing, and also who to address it to. And we'll just try to get it so there's more of a consistent approach with the letters of support.
Okay, anybody else? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think we accidentally said NCLGA, and of course we're thinking of UBCM. But yeah, I'm really glad. Kudos to everybody, and ditto on everything that we've said. It is very, very important. And I'm glad that you mentioned the port as well, because they're bringing in 25 million tons they're 25 million tons annually are basically going through there, and a lot of that's going to be coming through here. So I think they're an important piece as well.
Okay, thank you. I don't believe that we really need a motion on this. This is basically for information, and we are full steam ahead on this. Madam Clerk.
I'd like a motion directing staff to prepare that letter, please.
Okay, moved by Councillor Rudenberg, seconded by Councillor Runge. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, so that basically concludes that item of business, and now we're going to go to City Manager, the Director of Development Services regarding the Clean Team Program.
Thank you, Council. And as you will have read, this is really an interim report. I'll be bringing a further report on this matter, hopefully early August. As you're aware, we are seeking new funding for the Clean Team and for that program. We are working with Northern Health right now and are making some good headway on that, and I do hope to have something to you soon. However, our funding will not cover the month of August as we have it now, and I don't expect a contract to be in place until the beginning of September with Northern Health for a new plan, following Council's approval of that when it comes to. So what I'm requesting at this point is another tie over. I know you've provided one where we added some additional dollars, but this will be a tie over just for the month of August. It's in the amount of $6,000. The recommendation is that Council approves directing a further $6,000 from the Council Initiatives Fund to cover the Clean Team program until the end of August.
Okay, thank you for that. Is that a motion, Councillor Elliott or Councillor Rudenberg, to go ahead with that? And a seconder, Councillor Elliott. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, the next one is from the Forest Initiatives Manager regarding the future of forestry think tank outcomes. I'm sorry.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to provide Council with an update on the outcomes of the 2023 Future of Forestry Think Tank Initiative, and to seek Council approval for actioning the identified outcomes through the Forestry Initiatives Program. So I'm going to move into the bulleted section of your report. The outcomes from the 2023 think tank are as follows. Continue to evolve best practices in forest management to support forest and landscape resilience, as well as a forest economy through partnerships and collaboration with industry, First Nations, the province, and Finland. Continue to support exploration of solid wood manufacturing opportunities, such as mass timber construction. Continue to support exploration of bioeconomy option, including utilization of biomass and competitiveness of supply chains. develop a business case to make Quesnel a training center for alternate logging practices, similar to those in Finland, and working with the College of New Caledonia on this, and sign a memorandum of understanding with Finland and other partners to advance knowledge exchange and develop business partnerships. I'm just going to jump up to the summary part of your report. So Council will remember that since 2019, the city, along with project partners, has been working closely with Natural Resources Finland and the Finnish Trade Commission on advancing knowledge exchange between our two countries. Finland can assist Quesnel with knowledge on harvesting practices, machinery, and training, utilizing biomass for higher value products to reduce bush waste, prefabrication and mass timber for expedited construction projects, biodigesting supply chains, and expertise in district heating. Before I move into the recommendations, I would like to remind Council that 100% of the Forestry Initiatives Program is grant funded. No taxpayer money has been used to date in the past 5 years, and we've actually leveraged over $4 million into the community. And so the surplus that I will talk about in my recommendations is from administration fees that I've collected from said grants and also delivery allowances that they allow. So if it pleases Council, I'll move on to the recommendations, or do we have questions?
Yeah, we'll go to the motion, but first I'll ask for any questions or comments. No, so therefore, if I could get someone to move the recommendation, moved by Councillor Rudenberg, seconded by Councillor Runge. Is there any discussion on that? Okay, I will call. We're voting now on the recommendation that's at the bottom of that page.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
And it goes over to the following page as well.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Go ahead, Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, can we have those recommendations read out so the public understands what they are?
Okay. Would you like to do that, please, Aaron?
Yes. Okay. So recommendation 1 is two-part. That Council approves entering into a memorandum of understanding as attached to the July 18th, 23 agenda, together with LHTAKO DENE First Nation and the Karelia region of Finland to foster sustainable development, knowledge exchange, and joint initiatives in the forest-based sector. And that Mayor and the corporate administrator be authorized to execute such documentation as required to complete the agreement.
Okay, moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Rudenberg. Is there any, go ahead, Aaron.
The second recommendation on the second page, page 28 of 56, that Council approves spending from the Forestry Initiatives Program surplus to a threshold of $30,000 to advance outcomes of the think tank and leverage into larger provincial and federal funding envelopes.
Okay, I think what we need to do is deal with recommendation number 1 first and then come back and deal with that as a second motion. So what I'm going to do now is entertain, I'll call the question on the first recommendation. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, now could you maybe read the second resolution back into the record so that we're clear on what we're voting for?
The second one again. That Council approves spending from the Forestry Initiatives Program surplus to a threshold of $30,000 to advance outcomes of the think tank and leverage into larger provincial and federal funding envelopes.
Okay, thank you, and that's Councillor Elliott moving and Councillor McKelvey seconding. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Rudenberg.
Thank you. So this is just a heads up to Director Robinson that you might be getting a call from, I'm not sure if it's the province that's putting the session on at UBCM in September. They're talking about forestry, the forest landscape planning projects that are happening. I said it would be really nice to have somebody from a community that's actually part of the pilot project. So you might be getting that call to be a presenter.
Okay, thank you. And just a word, I will say that I didn't know about the the forestry think tank number 3 until after it was over, and I would really appreciate giving a bit of a heads up, because I went back in my calendar and I couldn't find it. So let's move on. But next time, if there's a forestry think tank number 4, I would love to be there. Okay, so we've done. Okay, now we're going to go to Admin Report 8123, Indigenous Crosswalk Project Coordinator Blair to report.
The purpose of this report is to update Council on the Cultural Crosswalk Project. The Indigenous Crosswalk Project came to fruition after discussions and roundtable meetings with chiefs from the surrounding 4 First Nations, former Mayor Simpson, Councillor Runberg, and staff from each organization. 3 crosswalks will be installed, 1 in each business improvement area, the same design throughout for continuity. The design has been a collaboration using input from the nations and design feasibility input from a line painting company. Final design is currently in the final stages of revision and approval from the nations. The 3 BIAs are funding the initial installation of each crosswalk. At this time, there will be 2 20-meter crosswalks, 1 in West Quesnel and 1 in South Quesnel, and 1 10-meter crosswalk in the downtown area. The Indigenous Crosswalk Project can serve as a reminder of the ongoing importance of reconciliation and allyship. The ongoing partnership between our communities and organizations creates a stronger and more resilient community that honors and celebrates our shared heritage. The Financial Sustainability and Audit Committee discussed this project in their June 28th meeting and passed the following motion: that the Financial Sustainability and Audit Committee recommends to Council that Council proceed with approving the Indigenous Crosswalk Project with 1 crosswalk in each BIA. The capital costs of the crosswalks are to be covered by the BIAs and the ongoing maintenance costs by the city. If there is no questions, I can move into the recommendation.
Okay, so
There's a question.
yes, we do. Go ahead, Councillor. Somebody wanted to speak here. Councillor Runge.
Yeah, thank you. And I love the idea. I think it's fabulous. For me, it's always the maintenance costs afterwards, and whether there's a ability to possibly have partnerships with various groups so that it doesn't become, like, to me, I still believe that, if this is a BIA key point, maybe there's a way to share costs with the city or with other interested parties that might want to also be on board with regards to supporting the maintenance. It's for me, the crosswalk by itself, I think, is a fabulous idea. It's the maintenance going forward at 40,000 every X number of years. I just want to make sure it's, well, maybe there's another way to also fund it. I guess that's what I'm asking for.
Okay, are you asking staff for a question for that?
I guess that we're considering other ways, just rather than just saying the city's going to fund it. Are we still in the process of looking for, sponsorships or different types of funding opportunities?
Yeah, so I approached the BIAs originally asking for long-term maintenance funding. They couldn't afford it with their small budgets. And then after direction from, I think it was a previous FSAC committee, I don't remember, I went forward and I asked the First Nations for long-term maintenance funding, and then after this June 28th FSAC meeting, it was recommended that the city funds the long-term maintenance. So we did go through alternate methods originally. Yeah.
Okay.
Just as an add-on, I actually believe that there's possibly a number of businesses in the community that would actually be, I think, quite keen on, co-sponsoring some of these things.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vic.
That's a great comment, because as it happens, anecdotally, I've had conversations with some interested businesses, service clubs, members of the community, and we're in the very beginning stages. I've talked with the city manager about the feasibility, and it is feasible to create more like a contingency or a fund for community members to contribute to. The name hasn't been decided, but under the guise of adopting a crosswalk. These are very special community crosswalks with a very important theme, and I know the uptake in the community could be very positive. So with discussions with the city manager and Director Bolton, we believe that we could initiate this adopt a crosswalk concept and approach the community for sponsorships ongoing.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vic. I normally like to have a motion on the floor before we have discussion, but we got this one mixed up a little bit. So now I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Councillor or City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further to Councillor Vic's discussion about adopt a crosswalk, I would suggest we've tried the adopt a theme before. We had a adopt a park theme, and the more formal it is, the worse it works. I don't think we want to have a program where we put out a sign and say, this crosswalk has been adopted by X, like you sometimes see on our sidewalks. But I certainly do think that if any groups are interested in putting down support for a crosswalk, the city would be happy to accumulate that money in a special firewalled fund that doesn't get spent on anything else, and we'd be able to give recognition of people who did that and give a tax receipt and such like. So I think we can achieve the ends without a formal process exactly. So it is doable.
Perfect. Okay, so Councillor Runberg.
Thank you. So I know that I get the angst from my colleague around the upkeep or maintenance costs. With the $20,000 crosswalk in West Quesnel, I have it on good authority that's half of their yearly budget. So that's not going to probably work for West Quesnel Business Association. I just want to say that this whole project is a perfect example of collaboration between the city and our First Nations in regards to showcasing our efforts around reconciliation. And so I'm very pleased that the Finance Committee has come forward with this recommendation. So thank you for that, and thank you for your work in trying to get that design made. I know that was some interesting conversations, so thank you for all the hard work across the board.
Thank you, Councillor Rudenberg. Do I have any more discussion, comments, questions? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Make the motion first.
Oh, would you like the motion read back?
I don't think we had a mover and a seconder, Mr. Mayor.
I'll move the motion.
Oh, I thought I already had that. Okay, moved Councillor Runge, seconded Councillor Vic. Sorry about that. Do you need the motion read, or you just pick it up right off the recommendation there? Okay, so no further discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you for that. The next report is from the city manager regarding the steam shovel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to discuss the next steps with that steam shovel, in particular the preferred location, the budget for that move, and funding source. So when thinking about where we want to move that steam shovel, we thought about what those parameters should be, and obviously it's very challenging to move it and very expensive to move it. So we thought the new location should be somewhere where it can be considered permanent. At least we think it's permanent when we put it in place. The new location should not encroach on any other infrastructure. The relocated steam shovel should not create other unintended consequences, such as distracting traffic at critical moments when it should be focusing on driving. And the new location hopefully should be highly visible to the public and accessible to wheel traffic. So the following locations have seemed to meet those criteria, some with more or less success. So I just want to go through these. And I did poll council to get ideas for this, and this covers off any ideas that council had. So you did have your chance to say where your preferred location was. First one was the Sandy Loop, and that is located on the east side of Moffett Bridge. Currently, that's a fairly busy station at certain times of the year. It contains the 2 sandy dump stations and then a water filling station. In addition, we made some parking at the other side with picnic tables. great visibility on that site, good public access, with adequate parking. So it meets some of those criteria. The downsides of that site is it can be a busy site. In particular, some of those old boys driving those great big RVs can be a little challenging to wheel around through there. Depending on the exact siting of the machine, it could be a sightline issue. And the sightline issue could be for some of the people, depending where you're turning there, if they're looking in particular by crystal glass, if you're turning onto the loop there, you need to really focus where you're turning and be looking for traffic. But the biggest issue there is a ton of buried infrastructure at that site. There's water, there's sewer, there's storm sewer, and an effluent line from Paull. So it would be very, very challenging to find any location on that site where that unit may not have to be moved depending on what that infrastructure change out was required. And there's a site diagram attached to this, and it's in color so you can see all the various pieces of infrastructure there. Some of those are big infrastructure, and some of them buried fairly deeply. So that means if you're going to access those for maintenance, you need a pretty wide trench. So it's not just where the infrastructure is, but it's the trench you need. So it would be challenging from that perspective. So the second site is Heritage Corner on Highway 97, and there's also a map showing that site, and that's just south of that Cornish water wheel that was rebuilt. I'm sure your first thoughts when you saw that was, wow, there isn't enough room on that site, because it looks like it's a really pinched site. But our director of infrastructure did take a look at that and said there was one spot in there where it would actually fit quite nicely, and it's actually right opposite from that little parking lot that we made where we put lines in there a few years ago. So it's right adjacent to parking. That site has good accessibility. It's also right beside the Riverfront Trail, which makes it highly visible to people using that trail. Shovel would be highly visible, with most or all through traffic being able to see it. Some minor relocates may need to be required. There's a bench, and possibly there's some old iron things there that would have to be moved. But there's no infrastructure was required, and no future interference is anticipated. So we think that's a pretty good site. The staff conclusion is that if council desires a location that is within city limits, that would probably be the best location recommended by staff. Third one, and I'm actually going to just flip to the fourth one because it's another in-city one, so I should have put it as number 3. So the fourth one was the BCR station. And there's enough room at that site, but there's not a lot of room at that site because we don't lease the whole site. We only lease the actual footprint around the old rail station. So we don't have that full site on lease, so you don't get to play with that whole thing. And but it's a highly visible site with pretty good access to it. The cons to that is sometimes there's lots of traffic at that site with the Rocky Mountaineer. And this unit's fairly big. It would take a number of parking spots. But the biggest issue there is the rail station is on leased property. And that's property where the city has talked about picking that up at some point in time, but at this point, it's not our property. And if we ever were not to lease that property, I expect that the property owner would say, okay, move your stuff out of there, right? So another big one is the main effluent line from Paull Ponds to the Fraser River runs through the parking lot. So again, you got that impingement against infrastructure. So, and then finally, any relocation to that site requires approval from CN and BCR, and that's a bit of a long, slow process. Also should bear mention any other city parks, because there's lots of other areas where we have parks, right? But what is critical is we don't want to alienate green space in those parks. So Laborde Park, for example, anytime if we even plant a tree there, we hear about it from users of that park saying there's no room, quit taking green space. West Fraser Timber Park, we know we have plans around that park for baseball and whatnot and reconfiguring that park, and it would be really premature to put more stuff over there. And Alex Fraser Park, same thing. There's always plans to do more things at those parks. So I would highly recommend not putting it in those locations. So that leaves one site which is out of town then, which is the Antique Machinery Park. I actually really like that site. The shovel could move into a permanent home. The point of that park is to accumulate and display old machinery. So as the name kind of implies. So that would be a great location from that perspective. In addition, if it was to move there, the park operators would be responsible for the future maintenance and upkeep costs versus the city. And that's a financial benefit. It doesn't take a lot of upkeep to it. Just paint every once in a while, but still a financial benefit to that. Lots of parking and easy accessibility to the Antique Machinery Park. The downside obviously is it's not in the city. So it's not attracting people to stop within the city. Probably has less visibility than any other city location, depending on how it's located on that site. The staff recommendation would be if council's okay with a location that is outside of city limits, the Antique Machinery Park is a great location. So from my perspective, I think that the staff perspective comes in. If you want a city in the city spot, the best location would be at that Heritage Corner. If you're fine with an outside of the city spot, the Antique Machinery Park ticks all the boxes. I think that's a great spot too. So at that point, it's purely a political decision. So I'll leave it to you guys to make that decision on where that location should be. Or if council has other ideas where you say, whoa, hold on, let's look at this or this location, we're happy to do that too. That's at council's discretion. Finally, the cost to relocate the steam shovel. We think it's going to be cost us $75,000 to move that thing and get it set up Audit on its new location. So and there's a big contingency number in there, 25,000, but depending on the location. So for example, if we put it down in Heritage Corner, we need to do some geotechnical work to make sure that it's not going to slowly move over into the Fraser River, because that would be quite bad. And it's a heavy unit, so we would need to do some investigation on what that ground looks like. And of course, any location we put to also has to have a bit of an archaeological review too. So that contingency may or may not all be used. As council will remember, we did put dollars into the budget. So we, in addition to applying for a grant, because we didn't know if we're going to get the grant, we put $80,000 into the budget to actually move that. So that $80,000 at this point is unused. So whatever, even if it takes $40,000 more of funding, the point of it is we've got 80 set aside for it. So it's not that we're asking for new money on this. There will actually be some coming back into our surplus. That's it. That's the report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Before I go to council for discussion on a potential location, I just want to say that, and it's no secret, that I was actually in favor of the Sandy Dump location, but that, at first I had gone up to the Heritage Corner location thinking that that was what I would have preferred. But when I eyeballed it, I thought no way that it would fit in there. But then I find out subsequent to that staff went down there with a tape measure, and indeed it will fit. And so I would be encouraging council to favor that location. With regard to the Antique Machinery Park location, I think, yes, there was an offer from the Antique Machinery Park people, but we're pretty adamant that we're looking for a permanent location. And with all due respect to the Antique Machinery Park, if the Antique Machinery Park somehow ages out or ceases to continue, then it would be necessary to relocate the steam shovel again. So I think that as far as assured permanence, that the location at the water wheel or at Antique, or pardon me, at Heritage Corner would be best. And also, it would be a very worthwhile addition to the Heritage Corner. We've got not only the Fraser Walking Bridge, which is undergoing major upgrade at the present time. It's right on the walking trail, and we also have the Collins overhead cairn there, and of course, the Cornish water wheel, the remains of the SS Enterprise paddle wheeler, the boiler out of that paddle wheeler, and also a couple of other artifacts that fit in well. And if council is agreeable to this, I would like to have further discussions with council about the possible tweaking the name of that facility, but that can come at a different time. So I'll leave it open now for council discussion. Is anybody wishing to make a motion with respect to any one of the proposed locations? Councillor Rudenberg.
Sorry, this is just a comment before we move into picking a location. I want to make the comment that I do believe it's an unfair comment that you made about the Antique Machinery Park, not knowing what their future holds. We have no idea how they're doing right now, and so for us to say that, you know, we want some place where it's permanent, I just think it's a very unfair comment to make, and it's not for us to decide whether they're solid or not right now, because we don't have that information. So just an unfair comment to take into consideration when we discuss where we'd like to put the steam shovel.
Thank you, Councillor Rudenberg, and I do respect what you've said, but it was just a question that popped up. So is there anyone else? Is there no one particularly in favor of any of the locations? Councillor McKelvey?
Yes, I'll make a motion to have the steam shovel permanent location at the Heritage Park.
At the Antique Machinery Park?
No, not the Antique Machinery Park.
The Heritage Corner.
The Heritage Corner, yes. Sorry.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Runge, you're seconding? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. And this would obviously be subject to staff coming back with a report, because the city manager did mention, you know, geotech and making sure that the site is capable of handling the load. Councillor or City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, with respect, if council votes for this, if it's doable, we're going to go ahead and get her done.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Vic.
I could support either location, but I'm concerned when we start talking geotech and archaeological excavations. So is that a given? That's going to have to be done if we pursue that location?
Thank you. Yes, everything that we do along the river needs particularly in close proximity like this, needs both of those done. That is our new standard. We do not do anything along the river without archaeological review. That is part of the agreement that we have. And right here, just below this site, actually, down along the river edge, there's a spot where we had to put some extra riprap in there a couple of years ago to support it, right? So we would really want to make sure that that's a solid site. It's pretty critical. So we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't do that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Runge.
So just further to that, Mr. City Manager, the archaeological review, I actually think is positive anyway, no matter which way it goes, because if we find something that's of relevance, I think that's a real positive thing, you know. So I'd be more worried about a major, you know, stability issue. The other part, hopefully, you know, we're going to be able to, you know, solve all the other issues also. Anyway, so I'm okay with that. It's the geotech. If it, you know, the archaeological, I think it's just a fabulous thing anyway to do. If we had tons of money, I'd do it along the whole river to straighten it all out. But given that, I'm okay with that. The geotech worries me, but hopefully it's going to be okay.
City Manager.
Thank you. And I should actually rephrase my earlier assertion that we'll just get her done. If there's a major geotechnical issue, we will not proceed with it. We will come back to council and we'll say, hey, we got to hold off on this and reconsider this again, because we don't want to try to fix a site that shouldn't have it on it, if that's the case.
Thank you. So I just want to state that I do recognize that the majority of council voted to not move the steam shovel to Likely, and my vote was not to move it, or to move it as we had agreed to. And there's so many reasons that I don't need to rehash. So this is a bit of a tough pill to swallow, given the costs now to bring it back into the downtown core. So I'm going to have to vote against the relocation of the steam shovel to this particular area.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything more, Councillor Vic? Go ahead.
I'm just going to state, and the city manager cleared it up, if there is a safety geotechnical reason that would prohibit the item being put there, then of course that will be a showstopper. So that satisfies my issue.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to mention that I'll come back to you, Councillor Elliott, but as you all know, I'm involved with the New Pathways to Gold Society, and our society has taken on many projects of building and rehabilitating and repairing Indigenous I guess, visitor attractions and amenities. And pretty well every project that we embark on requires not only archaeological, but also geotechnical investigation. So it's just a matter, or just a way of doing business these days. Councillor, was it Councillor Elliott? Yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo Councillor Rudenberg's comments about how this was handled and not going out to where it was promised and Likely. And I don't think I recall anyone ever apologizing to Likely, and I'd like to do that officially right now. I feel that the way that we handled this was atrocious, and I'm really disappointed with the bullying that took place towards their Chamber of Commerce. So on principle, I will not be voting in favor of this.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready for the vote? Is there any further question? So we have a mover, we have a seconder. So all in favor? Opposed? So it passes 3-2. So carry on, staff. Thank you. Is there anything? No, there's nothing more on that one. So, yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. It passes 3-2, but you as the mayor have a vote. So actually, if you're in favor of it, it passed 4-2.
It won't change anything, but obviously I'm in favor. Thank you. Okay, so that is the steam shovel. So now we're going to go to council information package, and we have item number 2 that is brought forward for discussion, the June 23, 2023 letter from Northern Health to Councillor Rudenberg regarding the meeting at the 2023 North Central Local Government Association Convention. So I'll hand it over to Councillor Rudenberg.
Thank you for that. So I just wanted to bring it back to your attention, some of the items that were discussed. I know that I included a few more in my report, but I just wanted to make sure that we keep these on the radar, and that I think one of the things in regards to the recruitment and retention of our physicians and healthcare workers, it would be nice to have an update from our program that we have here in regards to our recruitment opportunities. The other piece is I was really glad to hear that Director Turner is in discussion with Northern Health in regards to the clean team, because that was one of the topics of conversation we had around how do you fund those, knowing that they're an important piece and more communities are asking for it. So it's good to hear that that discussion is happening. So yeah, I just wanted to bring these points forward and make sure that they don't fall off our radar as we move forward.
Thank you. Now, just refresh my memory. There is an opportunity for a meeting with Northern Health at UBCM. How does that work?
I'm going to assume that they send out an invitation to those in NCL, in the Northern Health area, to have that meeting. I don't think it comes through the province, so it comes separate.
Okay, thank you. No, I know that it doesn't come through the province, and I was just wondering if Northern Health sends out an invitation, and have we responded, or if...
We haven't seen it.
Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
It generally comes closer to UBCM.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Councillor Rudenberg. Now we have general correspondence, and I'll go to our clerk for the letter from Rocky Mountaineer Partnership and Tourism Opportunities, their letter of June 20th.
I'm writing to express our appreciation for the City of Quesnel, including businesses and community members, for the role in welcoming travelers in our train journeys. The City of Quesnel is a valued partner, and we look forward to working with you to further build the local tourism economy and support local businesses and community organizations. We're focused on many social, cultural, and economic benefits tourism can bring to the area. We are in the process of developing a multi-year plan to decrease the overall environmental impact of our operations and deliver better social impacts. We welcome the opportunity to meet with members of Council to discuss how we can work together toward realizing shared goals and outcomes.
Thank you. I just want to add a personal comment to that in the Rotary Club, I'm the coordinator of the seniors annual expedition to Barkerville, where we take upwards of about 120 seniors plus a bunch of people from residents from Dunroven Lodge. And for last year's expedition, 4 days out, our charter company canceled on us, and we had to scramble, and we ended up with the University of Northern British Columbia and the Prince George Cougars putting up their buses for that trip. This year, I went back to the same charter bus company to ask for a quote, and they said they're not quoting on it. So here we were stuck without buses to take our seniors to Barkerville. At the end of the day, Rocky Mountaineer came through, no charge. They're taking our seniors out there pro bono, so we're absolutely thrilled over the moon with that. So that speaks to Rocky Mountaineer's dedication to the community, and we're genuinely appreciative of that. Councillor Rudenberg.
So I'd like to suggest that we, before they come to the council, because I'm not sure what they mean shared goals and outcomes, because I'm not sure what those goals and outcomes are right now. Perhaps staff might have an opportunity to have a discussion with them, because I know they're talking a little bit about environmental impact, et cetera. Perhaps we have staff have a quick chat with them before they come to council.
Staff, if we're having maybe a Zoom call with them, or I'd certainly like to participate in that call, because that is a good suggestion that we have some discussion with them prior to a formal meeting. Okay, so the next one is item number 2 under correspondence, Friends of the Games, their letter of June 20th.
Mr. Zakal wrote us asking for a letter of support for the Job Creation Partnerships application through Work BC to get jobs created for EI-eligible people in our community with respect to the Winter Games. Having a letter of support from the city would make a very huge statement to the JCP application and hopefully capitalize more on that huge economic growth that we're expected to gain from those games.
So is someone interested in making a motion for a letter of support? Where are we going with this? Councillor Elliott? Yes. Oh, you're moving. Okay. Councillor Runge is seconding. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And finally, the Minerals North, this is, they're not asking for anything, but certainly sending kudos to us as the city councilor or council, and also obviously to the community. So, Madam Clerk, if you could just capsulize that.
A heartfelt thanks to Quesnel for hosting a very successful Minerals North 2023. Thanks are especially due to Charlene Lawrence and Amy Reed. Rarely has Minerals North had such continuity with the persons organizing the event. They were in Houston in 2018, energetically supporting the application to host Minerals North, and 5 years later spent long hours around the West Fraser Center, making sure Minerals North 2023 fulfilled their high expectations for the event. Following COVID, I feel Minerals North has regained its footing as a must-attend event.
Okay, thank you. There's no, obviously, any motion coming out of that. That's just for council's information. So moving on now, we do not have any changes to upcoming meeting schedules, nor do we have changes to committee appointments. Announcements, future events. Well, I'm going to just put in a plug for a past event, and it's obviously the resounding success of Billy Barker Days in spite of all of the smoke. And attendance, I was at the Crash to Pass and also down to the stage, and in fact, I've got to tell a little story. I was supposed to make a speech at the stage in my phone. I had it at 12:30. Saturday, right after the parade, and after pushing my shopping buggy through the parade, I was a bit of a panic to get there, but I got down to the Billy Barker office at 10 minutes after 12, and I walked in there so proud of the fact that I was 20 minutes early for my appointment, and Barry McKillican turned to me and he says, no, Mr. Mayor, you're 10 minutes late for your appointment. Your appointment was at noon, not at 12:30. So, and at the end of the day, I'm sure that the crowd was happy not to hear from a politician, but to listen to the entertainment. And, you know, the Crash to Pass, I think it was pretty well a record attendance. I can tell you that I always sort of judge the attendance by the value of the proceeds for the 50-50 draw, and the proceeds for the 50-50 draw at Crash to Pass was over $15,000. So that really shows you that Quesnel is anxious to get out and enjoy the festival. As I say, in spite of the smoke, it was an excellent time, and I've had many compliments, and I've checked with the RCMP, and things were good. So thank you for that. Does anyone else have anything? Councillor Vic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you could indulge me, a citizen resident asked me to convey his story. Many of you may know a fella, his name is Archie Chantyman. He's an artist in our community. He conveys his oral history. He's a survivor of the residential school system, and I've known Archie for more than a decade. Archie's going on a journey. He's doing a walk for healing and reconciliation beginning on September 5th, and he's going on a journey that will take him from Loose Coos through Nasco to Quesnel, Williams Lake, ending in the Williams Lake St. Joseph's former residential school site. It's a 319-kilometer walk. So Archie asked me to just share that information to council. I'm not going to read all the contact information, but I will read Archie's phone number. He can be reached at 250-925-0846, and I will, there's other contact information I will provide to Rhea. But if Archie is just looking for support for this journey he's going on, you can even join him if you wish to be part of the walk with him. He's inviting people to come with him. It's a very important journey for Archie. It's in memory of his late uncle, Robert Jimmy, and I support Archie on his journey, and I thought I'd share that little story. So I'll provide more details to Rhea on how you can contact Archie if you wish to support him, but just to let you know that a resident of ours is going on a very important journey.
Thank you, Councillor Vic, and to staff. I'd appreciate getting a copy of that, because I would be interested in participating and showing on behalf of council our support. And certainly I would hope that other councillors are able to do that. But I think it's a very worthwhile and timely cause. Do we have anything else for the good of council before I call for a motion to adjourn? And we will be going into a special closed meeting within a few minutes of closure of this meeting. So a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry? Gallery questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Gallery questions. Hey, Bob. Okay. No one's got any gallery questions, so now, thank you, Rhea. So now I will ask for a motion to adjourn, and that's Councillor Runge and Councillor McKelvey. Anyone opposed? I'm sure they're not, so we're all in favor. Carried.